Welcome everybody. I'm joined by a special guest today. This is Kevin Ryan. He's a loan officer with Main Street Home Loans. Special enough, I had actually come up with the idea to sit down not long before you and I met for the first time, and we talked about it when we met last time, so it seems appropriate that you're here to join me for the first one.
We finally did it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Well, thanks for coming. So, how long have you been doing mortgages?
So I started work with Main Street Home Loans about 8 months ago.
Oh, really?
So fairly new. Passed the test last summer. Was on my boss's hip for a month and a half or so, just learning, and then been on the run ever since.
I started in 2018. Left everything behind to join this brave new world of real estate, but super exciting. I'm glad I did it.
Me and you both. Yes.
Are you still excited that you did it? 8 months in?
I'm as excited as I've ever been. Yeah, but honestly, it's flown by, and 8 months. I mean, it seems like such a little time, and it is, but it has flown by.
Yeah, you're not kidding. It's crazy how quickly the time goes by. Like the fact that I started in 2018 to me is just crazy that it has been that long.
Yeah, and you never stop learning.
No.
In this industry, there's a question every single day that needs to be answered, something new, so you never stop learning, and I love that.
And I honestly think, like, if you get to a point where, like, you don't, like, come across something that's making you question things, that you should be careful because something's coming your way.
Don't get comfortable.
Because it's like, every time, like, and I'm curious if this is the same for you as it is, for me as a realtor, that just, like, there are like these days where real estate is like the greatest thing in the world, and then there's days when you're just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is like the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, why do I do this to myself? Like, why would I subject myself to this kind of torture?
You got to be ready for absolutely everything. Yeah. There's certain days that everything falls into place, and you're making phone calls that are fun to make, and then the next day is like phone calls you have to get the stomach to make, or just things that you might have missed during the process or something like that. So it's all a big learning curve and everything too, but I mean, it's still something I love.
Yeah. What made you choose mortgages?
So, I'm glad you asked that, actually. I've been in some sort of sales my whole adult career. From college on, I've just been doing some sort of sales. And I like that aspect of it, but I've never had a job that at its core is truly for the benefit of somebody else. You know what I mean? And I think you can agree that's what real estate is. I mean, everything that we do is for the betterment of the borrower, the client, or whatever. And that's what I love about it. I mean, I don't know if I can tell you that's why I necessarily got into it, but it's what I found out immediately once I did get into it. And it's something that I truly love about it. I mean, you wake up every day and it's, your goal that day is to help somebody, and I love that part of it.
I, on the other hand, never did any sales. Like, I never had a sales position. I had customer service jobs, but nothing that was specifically sales driven. But for me, I had a government job, and I didn't feel like I had any purpose. I didn't feel like I was making any kind of a meaningful difference. And I didn't really realize how much I missed that until I started in real estate. And that to me has been my favorite part, is just the connections that you make with people. The fact that you're helping them make this huge investment, that to me, it just makes all the difference. Like, I love doing that. That's why I like working with buyers and first-time home buyers, because I remember how excited I was when I bought my house. So to be able to be a part of that and see their excitement, I just don't think that there's any better feeling than when you're working with someone and they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, I never thought I would be able to actually do this.
And they need you. I mean, you need to be there the entire way through it, which I love about it. And because of that, you build this personal connection with that person for that. For me, it's like a 30-day gap for the most part of that loan process. For you, it's even longer. But you have that personal connection with them, and hopefully things go smooth and everything. And by the end of it, you're friends. And then, like you said, there's nothing better. You're at the closing table. They get the keys. They get their home. The American dream.
It's just everybody's happy. And it's just nice to be a part of that. And And so I would ask, like, what is your favorite part about what you do?
Okay, yeah, that's it. I mean, my favorite part about it is the closing table, right? It's the seeing that all this hard work that you and your team, because there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
So you and your team, you know, it all comes to this closing table, and they're happy signing these papers. They might not know what they're signing, but they trust the attorney, and they get these keys, you know, and they're so happy. You get the hug and everything too, and then you keep in touch, and it's just like another relationship that you now have.
So we talked about the good day.
Okay.
But you can't talk about your good day without saying, what is the hardest part about what you do?
The hardest part is, you know, you have a lot of communication and a lot of conversations with first-time home buyers and stuff. And I think one of the hardest parts is, you know, there's a lot of days where you're telling people that they can't do it. And that sucks. You know, when you pull credit and you look at it and they simply just don't have the income or whatever it takes, and you know, the conversation with them is you just simply can't do it right now. That part's hard to do. It's never an easy conversation. But I still think it's important to have the conversation, because the conversation shouldn't be me saying, you can't get this home and see you never. It's a conversation of, this is where you're at now. This is what needs to be done to get you to where you need to be. And that's why it's so valuable and important to talk to a loan officer, is for that reason. But it never gets easier to tell that person the first time they're not ready.
It's just, that is, for me, that's far and away the worst part. Like, the part I hate the absolute most is just, like, anytime you have to deliver bad news. Like, you never want to deliver bad news. You know, whether it's like, oh, I'm sorry, your offer wasn't accepted, but, you know, the worst one I ever had was, I had some clients that were selling a house, and, you know, they basically they owned the house for like over 10 years, and they ended up having to pay to sell their house. You know, so like, that was such a hard, like, I think thus far in my career, that was like the hardest day for me. I had to deliver so much bad news to the nicest people.
I know.
They were so nice.
I know.
And it was like, that's just, I hate that part. That just,
and to explain why they can't and stuff.
But it's also, like you said, it's important. Like, you have to be able to relay that information. Like, even though it sucks, like, you have to do it. Like, that is my job. That's your job. Unfortunately, like, we get to be the bearer of good news, but we also have to be the bearer of bad news.
Yes. By far the worst part. You know, at the end of the day today, the rates are what they are. They're great, right? But they are what they are. I mean, every company, for the most part, you know, can get relatively the same rates, right? And so at this point, it becomes up to us to get that trust to them, or from them, have that good communication with them, a friendship, a personal connection as the loan goes on too. So
I'm glad you said that, because this is, you know, again, one of the things that I stress with people is, like, you know, almost any lender can get you a good rate. Like, the rates don't really change. Like, I know that there's people out there that advertise, oh, we can do this rate for you. And that's great, but that's not, like, anybody can get you a good rate. Like, that should not be your focal point when you're picking somebody.
No, absolutely not.
You know, almost anybody will get you a good rate. Find someone you trust, find someone you get along with, because that is just going to make everything better in the long run, and they're still going to probably get you that rate.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you say that too. I mean, rates aren't everything, and you know, like you said, you're going to be able to give them the best rate possible. And where I work, and there's no reason not to. There's, you know, anymore in the industry, there's no reason for somebody to get a worse rate, because it's not like you get paid on rate or anything like that. You know, there's no reason. So find somebody who you enjoy working with, who you trust, who you know will pick up the phone, and go with them.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a town of Hastings, Nebraska. So I'm born in Nebraska, born and raised. Town of about 25,000 people. Out here, when you say you're from Nebraska, everyone thinks you're born on a farm. However, it's not the case. I was born in a city. And I talked to somebody recently, and they're like, you know, they assume you're on a farm. I was like, no, I was in the city. And they're like, how close was the nearest cornfield? And I was like, well, still like 3 blocks away, but still. So Hastings, Nebraska is where I was born and raised.
And so what brought you to Massachusetts?
A lot of layers go to that, but I mean, my first time I was ever came to Boston was after my senior year of high school, and I fell in love with the city. I mean, that was first and foremost. I mean, to me it was like a big city, but it didn't feel big. It wasn't like I was in New York City. It doesn't have the same feel, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I love that part of it. And at that time, it was more like I could see myself moving here one day. And then I went to college in Nebraska and did all that. And my first job out of college, I traveled all the time, and Boston was where I would travel to quite a bit. And I come to the city every couple months, and I just loved it. And I went out and I would do certain things, and then it just what started as like a daydream started to become reality. And I was like, I had the savings, maybe I could do it, take a chance.
Yeah.
And I was like 24, 25 years old, and I just decided to do it, to give it a chance. And I miss back home every day, but like it was the best decision I ever made.
I'm curious, as a Massachusetts transplant myself, have you found the community to be welcoming to you, or less welcoming than Nebraska?
That's a good question, and here's how I answer that question, because I get asked that a fair amount. I think that the difference is this: back home in Nebraska, everybody is upfront nice to you. Everybody. I mean, you just you walk down the street, people wave at you, and this kind of thing, which doesn't happen out here. But what I say about people out here, I say it's not like it's not an upfront nice. It's like there's a barrier in front, a little bit of a barrier. Like, why should I like this person? Why should I trust this person?
Just a little bit more guarded.
But the second you break that barrier, nicest people in the world, most loyal, hilarious people in the world. Yeah, I think so. Like, the second you get in, and I like that about it. I kind of like beating that barrier and then them opening up.
So I was curious, because so I grew up in New Hampshire. It's obviously not Nebraska. I mean, it's not really far away.
More similar though.
But like, for me, when I came to specifically this North Quabbin region, I found the community was incredibly welcoming. And very generous. And even when I was going through the whole COVID thing and at home, like the amount of outreach that we received while we were home was just like something I had never really experienced. Like even where I grew up my whole life, like even that, like I never had that.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm kind of curious, because I know, and people might be upset about this, but I know Massachusetts kind of has this reputation that people are not necessarily super outgoing, but that hasn't really necessarily been my experience. So I'm curious, from another transplant,
I agree.
Like, whether you see that to be true as well.
The stereotype is definitely out there, especially that everyone I talk to back home is like, isn't everyone so mean? And it's not the case at all. No, I really don't think so at all. I mean, I do. I think the word loyal is what I go back to. I mean, like, I go to the same coffee shop every morning, and you can bet they know my name, and they're happy to see you. And there's a lot of that around here. So no, I don't buy the stereotype. I mean, of course, there's certain conversations you have with people, and they might tell you off or something like that. But like, no, I don't believe the stereotype is what it is.
Right. Besides credit scores, so I refer to credit scores as kind of the big sexy of finance.
Yeah.
So it's, everybody knows about credit scores. If you talk to any buyer, any first-time home buyer, and you ask them what you need for a mortgage, they're going to tell you, credit score.
Yeah.
So everybody knows about credit score. But aside from credit score, what types of things go into approving somebody for a mortgage?
So, I mean, credit score is obviously huge, but I mean, you're going to have to look at the pre-approval side of it. I think people get confused between like a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. Like a pre-qualification, we can look at your debt and we can look at your income, and you're going to say you're probably going to be within this range. Pre-approval is much different. I mean, this is where we need the proof of all that. This is where we actually run it through a system to show that this loan works. So you need your proof of assets, right? You need your bank statements. We're going to need to show proof that you're employed in the most recent pay stub, and then we're going to show, that you have the income that you actually state you have, your W-2s and all that. That's the stuff that we actually need to see, and along with your debt and credit, just to run it through our system and say, hey, this is approved, you're good to go, give it back to you and go out on the market. Yeah.
So you kind of touched upon this now. I think that this is, people would be surprised that this is actually a bigger factor, I think, in a mortgage pre-approval than most people know. But, can you kind of explain the whole debt-to-income ratio thing?
Yeah, so what we look at as a lender is, we'll pull your credit, and when we do that, we pull in your liabilities.
Yep.
So what that means is we can see all of your monthly payments and the amount that you're paying on those. That's going to be your car payments, your credit cards, your student loans, everything that you're paying monthly pulls into that. So we take those liabilities, we take that debt, and we stack it up against the income that you have coming in consistently. And that ratio then lets us know what kind of loan program I guess you're qualified for, or if you're qualified at all. So like a 45 back end debt to income. So 45% of your income goes to debt. If it's 45 or below that, you can get a conventional loan, right? If it's above that, if more of your income is paying off debt, say like half of it or something, you're no longer available to do conventional loan. However, there are programs to a certain extent where you can still get a home with a higher debt to income. It's basically something that we as a lender will coach you and talk to you about, let you know where you sit, and let you know what's available to you.
Like, what's kind of the range that you can work with?
So right now we're going about 580 up.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And that's new. That's changed recently because like with the pandemic and everything, it was more like 620 and up for the longest time. If you could qualify 620 conventionally, FHA was still like 640 and above. It's changed recently, so we're kind of, I guess easing up a little bit to where we can still look at loans that are going to be 580 and above.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Pending a pre-approval. So when they're in the process, they're submitting things into you. What are some things not to do?
Don't get more debt. The biggest thing is that. I mean, at any point from the first conversation to the end, to the closing table, don't open up any more debt. It will always trigger, we'll always know, and it'll always trigger it, and it could potentially mess up the entire thing. That debt to income is very tricky. If you're really close to that debt to income, one little thing can trigger it and mess up everything and script loans. So stay patient. Wait till you sign the paperwork and then do whatever you want, but not during it.
Yeah, it's the same thing I tell people, like, don't make any changes. Just stay the course until the day you get handed the keys. Like, just don't make any big changes.
That's exactly right.
It's great that you're under contract. Don't go out and charge a bunch of furniture to your credit cards. Like, don't open up credit cards for new furniture once you get the keys. Like, don't buy a new car, because I've seen that one happen.
I have too.
Yeah, just don't make a bunch of changes until you have everything set. And not even just the pre-approval. But just like
the whole loan.
Until you get those keys. So you sign those papers, just don't make changes.
Don't make changes.
Any changes that you make can just totally affect everything. Because like you said, I mean, it can come down to the most incremental change can make a huge difference.
Huge difference. And just, I guess the other piece of advice would just be call and ask. Before you do anything, call me, call you, and just say, is this okay? Because we'll tell you. We'll tell you with passion if it's not.
Yeah, so, which is, again, have a good working relationship with whoever you're working with, real estate professional and your lenders.
Exactly right.
Like, have a good relationship with them so that if you're curious about something, you should feel comfortable reaching out to them and saying, oh, hey, I saw this beautiful couch. I was thinking about putting it on my credit card. What do you think? No. So what show or series are you currently binging?
This is such a new thing in my life. I have recently gotten into chess.
Really?
Chess, and I love it. All I want to do is play it. It's crazy. I never thought I'd be saying that. So I am now getting into the Queen's Gambit, which I think typically is the other way around. I think people watch Queen's Gambit then start playing chess.
Then get into chess.
I'm just somehow playing chess, and I love it. So now it's like going to make the show that much better. I already know. So that's where I'm at now, and I'm early on, but that's my show.
So I haven't caught that one, but I've heard really good things about that show. But for me right now, it is without question The Expanse.
No, I don't even know what that is.
So it's a science fiction show. And it's basically, without going into a lot of details, it's kind of like you have different human factions throughout the galaxy. And they're kind of warring with each other. Like, that is, like, in the most layman's term, the way that I can explain the show. But what's on the radio for the ride home?
Radio for the ride home. I love music. Blame it on my roots right now. I think it's been country. I've been listening to a lot of country again. Eric Church, the new Morgan Wallen. I've been listening to all of it. But, since we're on camera, I'll put out my favorites. Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joel.
Nice.
That's something to be said about driving down the road listening to music.
I totally agree with you. I mean, there's just, and this is, again, one of the freedoms that I love about real estate is it does give you the opportunity to get out there.
It does.
And, like, when you've got, like, a nice sunny day and you're cruising in the car with the tunes going, like, that to me is just That's just like my perfect
Yeah.
environment.
Oh yeah, you leave say you leave the closing table. It's a sunny day, you're driving back, there's nothing better.
And as far as music, the people that know me really well know I am actually a huge Deadhead.
Dead! Okay.
So yeah, I'm a big Grateful Dead fan.
Wow.
More often than not, that is usually what can be found playing.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I would not have guessed that.
Nope, most people won't.
That's funny. It's cool.
All right, man. Well, hey, I appreciate this.
Absolutely, I appreciate
I
this
appreciate
too.
you coming down. I appreciate the time. I think this went well.
I agree, I had a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun.
All right. So my guest today, Kevin Ryan, I will put his information down below in the comments. So if you're looking for a mortgage or to get a pre-approval, his contact information will be down there. Feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.